it looks like we are about to have one of the most important turnarounds in our criminal justice system, especially in relations to gang violence and gang-related issues. Because Minister Groenewald is saying he wants to work with Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, and the proposal is one: no parole for gang members.
So we act immediately. Yeah. But I want to say again, we're running out of time.
Yes, sir.
Of course, I am the first person to admit that we have a problem. And if I can have my way, we are looking at this moment at amending legislation. I would like to have in our legislation to determine if a prisoner becomes a member of a gang in prison, that he or she does not qualify for parole. And I hope that the members of Parliament will support me when we bring that amendment legislation to Parliament.
This is so important and very drastic change. And if I tell you that I never expected this duo, I'll be lying, because I think we need this duo, and it's about to turn things around. If you're interested to find out what is actually going on with this particular plan that Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi and Mr. Groenewald have, stick around, let us talk about it.
And also the involvement of Correctional Services is reflected on the third one, as the Minister of Correctional Service and Minister of Justice and Correctional Service had indicated that the maximum prison of Kokstad would be made available, and as well as a close working relationship between the other facilities in KZN. That has made it easier for the detention and the control of access to the suspects in those detention facilities. And the courts are playing, the correctional facilities are playing a critical role in also monitoring the activities that are happening around the people that are arrested. Visitors that are coming to see them, they're able to share with the team that there was this person who came to visit the person that has been detained. And that allows the team to investigate further the involvement of those people, so that it helps us to link them to such a person. There's been a lot of success as a result of that, which we thank Correctional Services for playing that critical role to help with this investigation, not only just to detain the people, but to assist also with the interviews, making the facilities available for the team to have easy access to correctional facilities.
So, Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, we know that on Wednesday stood before the Parliamentary Committee on Police, and they sort of had something like a summit where they talk about specifically gang-related violence and the issues that are surrounding gang-related violence, and why we need to tackle the issue of gangs in South Africa, because we know that the serious issue of gangs is too deep and too strong. And what makes it deep and strong is because of the socio-economic issues in our country. And the socio-economic issues include the issues of unemployment, the fact that our youth have nothing to do in society. There isn't much that is being done by government and communities to ensure that, they keep the youth busy instead of them ending up being part of the gangs. Someone even came to the ENCA, had an interview, and even said the reason why they ended up being part of the gang is because they didn't have a father figure. So even family structures contribute, and people end up being part of these gangs or anything that is related to gangs.
And when we look at it as a South African police service, most of the time, we find that the answer rests with mainly two things. It's a group of boys and some girls that joins in that want some identity amongst themselves. So the identity then is defined by different things. They give themselves names, and by and large, DCS assist them in prison, the gang numbers, that they form themselves and they group themselves into numbers. And from there, then they develop culture of how they live. But more importantly, then they have to have a certain lifestyle. That's the second important thing. So their lifestyle needs to be supported by loot, by money. So, and what then they do, then they establish different trades that they enter into for them to be able to sustain their lifestyle. One of them is drugs. Some of it is human trafficking, especially for children. and others, illicit goods. They participate in many. Nowadays, the gangs are even getting involved in tenders, just so that they can sustain the lifestyle.
Not that it's an excuse that I think it's good for people to just be gangs because they come from poor backgrounds, because they don't have parents. But this is some of the things that make people to end up being part of gangs. And that is what Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was talking about, that the problem of gangs in our communities is not an issue that has to be put as the burden that the subs only has to carry. It's a burden that even the community itself has to assist, and the government has to play a very active and significant role, because the police can arrest someone in the community today and they will go back and do the same crime, because clearly it looks like the problem is deeper than just getting someone arrested. Actually, he then went further to speak about the fact that even arresting that person is even more dangerous, because you arrest them as an amateur gang member, and by the time they leave prison, they are actually the master. They have more knowledge, they have more understanding, they have more tricks, they know more things, because prisons have become an institution of these people to actually learn how to actually be the best gang members or gang leaders and pull these things that are illegal. Because we know that people that are part of gangs, there's nothing good that comes out of gangs. It's rare for us to actually find a gang where they're actually doing education. They're teaching people to do things that are going to change lives and are going to be enhancing the community. In most cases, it's crime. It's the things that are related to substances, trafficking, money, stealing, all those different types of things that they find themselves involved in. So it's just crime. So in most cases, these people, they find pleasure and completeness in being part of the gangs, because there's nothing much that they're doing, and they also want jobs. Some of them went to school. Some of them dropped out because they couldn't complete their education. Then they find solace and comfortability as well as solution in being part of gangs, despite the fact that these gangs literally, they are doing a lot of illegality and criminality in our country and society.
I want to say, I do not deny the fact that we have a huge problem in terms of the gangs in our prisons. But if we are truthful to the truth, then we must also say communities must also play their part. There are many gang members that has never been in a prison. And I think part of the breeding grounds are poor communities where gangs misuse the situation and where they then recruit members. We've heard even children of 7, 8 years. So it's a problem that we as the government, as far as correctional services are concerned, and the communities must take hands. Let me say this also. I've been on the portfolio committee my whole political career for more than 30 years, about 35 years, and we had numerous presentations in the portfolio committee of police on gangs. And I was always astonished to see that they have the names, they have the names of the leaders of the gangs, and I've always asked, so what are you doing about it? You know who are the gangs, you know who are the leaders, why don't you arrest them? So that we must be honest with others to say we have a mutual responsibility.
So he believes that dealing with such issues, or dealing with the socioeconomic issues in communities, is one of the first important solutions to deal with the issue of gangs, because creating employment, opportunity, belonging, protection, all those sorts of things, it's not going to be easy for people to use those type of situations to say, that's why I ended up being a criminal, that's why I ended up being part of a gang. Then Mkhwanazi comes with a really amazing solution, in my view. He says that we need to send a thief to catch a thief. And that is what the solution that he's providing, that in most cases, we need to create an environment where you don't just say they're just thieves, leave them there. Because even the thieves themselves, the game that they play is that they recruit police officers. Sometimes it's not even a recruitment of police officers. They recruit the person outside the person is already a gang member before they even enter into the subs. And by the time they become a subs member or an officer of the correctional services, they're already part of some gang. And because of lack of vetting with the police, the lack of the proper procedure to check if someone is clean and all of those things, because of those failures to do that, therefore it's easy for them to end up hiring people that are going to come into the system and actually enable these gangsters inside the prison and facilities. So he provides this solution that, you know what, let us get some of these people. He says gangsters, the way they are so smart and sophisticated these days, they work with lawyers, they work with judges, they work with prosecutors, they work with correctional facilities, they work with everybody. So meaning they are sophisticated, they have advanced the level. Even made an example about lawyers, that you would see a lawyer who's a criminal lawyer representing a client who's accused of crime, and this lawyer is living beyond her means or his means and is literally living the life, and you find that that life is being funded by these people that are part of gangs. So these people are so sophisticated. So for you to catch up on them, you also need to be sophisticated. That is why Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi suggested that, you know what, an eye for an eye looks like it's a solution. Get some of these people that are gang members, recruit them, make them some kind of like informants in a way, if you want to put it like that. Recruit them with intelligence information, make them to be intelligence informants to go and penetrate inside the system of these gang members so that you can have information and intel from the inside, because that is the game that these gang leaders are actually playing. So in order for you to actually also be on the safe side as the subs, you need to also play the same game of trying to penetrate and get these people that are part of the gangs acting like they're part of the gangs, but they're actually equipped by the police to be informants so that they can work from the inside. And that is where this whole thing becomes meticulous plan that he has to deal with the issue of gang violence.
The most expensive suburbs, Cape Points and the likes. So those are sophisticated crew. So these are all the gangs that are contributing to the problems that we have in the country. So we'll have to expand and get to those gangs so that you can understand exactly what is the problem, why do they do what they do? Because I believe we sitting here might not be able to solve a problem that we don't know. Until we get the people that are part of it, they will be able to tell you. Those that are willing to tell you, they'll tell you, okay, no, this is how we do. The good financial companies that want to protect hackers from their systems, they employ hackers to be employed in a bank so that the hacker can be able to develop a system to protect hacking other hackers from coming in. So that idioms of saying you send a thief to catch a thief, I think is something that we might really have to look at, because honestly, we might not survive without using those people that really understand the system. That's why in the police we employ intelligence. I've said it before. We have to recruit people to get them into the criminal system so that they feed us with information.
It gets even worse and even important, because he speaks now about these officers, that the people that are enabling the gangs are men and women in brown who are correctional services officers that are going inside there, giving them contrabands, giving them all the weapons, giving them cell phones, giving them anything that is going to equip them as prisoners, that is going to make even anyone to actually end up joining the gang. Because one of the things that were argued or were made by a person who was once a gang member, he said that you can't avoid it when you get incarcerated. Hence, people that get incarcerated, they come out worse, because when they get inside there, you need protection, you need to be safe, you need to eat, you need all of those things, you need a place to sleep. And for you to get all of those resources, you need to be part of a gang.
And if you have to stab your way up the rank, you get added years for that, depending on how you did it and what you did. And so that 6 months can turn into a year, into 2 years. And while you are there, you need the protection of the gangs, which is the numbers gang. And many boys that go into prison, they choose that because they want to be protected, they want to be safe. So they up and choose to belong to a gang. And in that process, they get taught how to survive inside and how to survive outside.
That's how bad it is in the correctional services. And who's enabling that? who's giving them cell phones to call people from the outside, who's giving them weapons, who's giving them all of those things, enabling them to talk to people from the outside and do all the things that they do, is the men and women in brown. And they are so important in this whole thing because some of them have been equipped. They are part of these gangs. They use the lingo, the slang. They speak all the language, but they're still members of the correctional services or the SAPs.
It's our colleagues in brown uniform. We can hide it, but the honest truth is our correctional facilities are the breeding grounds of crime and gangs. Say what you like. They are a breeding grounds of gangs. They walk in there innocent, not knowing much. They come out there being coached into being numbers, and they can speak the language. One of the officials was arrested recently, I think last week, wanting to take contrabands into one of the correctional facilities here, an official. So that tells you that there's something wrong inside the very same correctional centers that we think we are sending people to come back, change individuals, but they actually come back worse than before. So then we ask ourselves a question: is our correctional facilities doing what the government wants them to do? Until we interrogate those things, let's forget about dealing with gangs, because the breeding ground is in prison. We chase the street, we arrest them, we send them in prison, they become hard gangs, and they come out with new strategies.
Hence, I even understand the police commissioner in Limpopo, who also is like Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, despises men and women in blue that are corrupt.
Yes, I've got a very strong feeling towards corruption and police involvement in crime. And I said very clearly today that we are not going to tolerate that. The community currently does not trust the police. And I think the Nhlanhla Commission put a spotlight on the corruption and the conniving with criminals from within SAPs. And the only way for us as the police service to allow or to assist and help the community to trust us again is to actively deal with corruption and crime within our own ranks.
But it's something that we cannot avoid, because even the statistics that were given by the Minister of Correctional Services, Minister Groenewald, he said during the previous financial year, Correctional Services intensified raids from 466 to approximately 1,406 raids. Those operations resulted in the confiscation of over 37,500 cell phones and other contrabands. And I want you to let that number sink in, because it's important to show that literally there's people that are controlling this from the inside and enabling these people from the inside. Hence, Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi say, let's put the informers, because the informers are going to be the ones that are telling us who are these officers that are actually part of these gangs and are actually enabling such gangs to actually be able to continue doing what they're doing inside. Because clearly it looks like we don't have a rehabilitation system in our country. Instead, we have a system that is actually perpetuating and is enabling this behavior of people being part of gangs, which is a serious problem in our country, especially in places like Cape Flats, where it is the hotspot for gangs and gang leaders and all of those things.
Let me come to the prisons.
Yes.
Firstly, yes, of course, we have a problem. Specifically when we talk about the 26, 27, 28 gangs, specifically also in the Western Cape. But what did we do? You've referred to under my watch. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at the 24-25 financial year, you would have noted that we had about 466 raids, specifically when it comes to contraband, and focused also on cell phones, because the cell phones are the real problem where gang members, gang leaders, they are in prison and they still continue with their organized crime. Now, we have increased those rates in the last financial year to 1,406. It's a 200% increase, where we confiscated more than 37,000 cell phones. So from our side, we know it's a problem, and we do something about it.
Which then brings us to the solution that Minister Groenewald is providing. Mr. Groenewald is saying that we have had a case of an officer in Brown that was found to have been enabling these gangs. And because of that, it doesn't look like there is a solution thus far. The only solution now is that if you have been identified and you have been seen as someone who's part of a gang, you will never get the parole. And that is a bill that is proposing. And he is promising that he would like to work with Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi in such an initiative. They still have to propose it to Parliament. Parliament has to accept it. It has to be made a bill, and then it has to, at some point, be made a legislation if everybody agrees and the societies have placed their comments and all of those processes that go into creating a legislation.
Well, I think to hold me accountable is firstly, I would like to ask General Mkhwanazi to take hands and join our intelligence-driven operations so that we can identify the people and see who are the real culprits and get the kingpins and remove them. That's the first one.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good example to ask, did General Mkhwanazi join hands with Correctional Services, and in what way? And then we can see about the accountability. Secondly, we must look at the range. We must look at how many cell phones we remove. And in the end, we must also then give the figures, and that is there are annual reports to see how we perform in terms of our annual targets. It's a public document once it's been published in Parliament, so please hold us accountable. We do not shy away from the truth.
So that is what the Minister Groenewald is actually proposing as a solution to deal with this issue of gangs. And I think for me, this is a good initiative. It is a good starting point. As to whether it's going to happen or not, because of the process that is involved, the extensive process that is involved in creating something of this nature to a law, we don't know what will actually happen. But I think that from what we know and what we've seen from Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, high chances this is an initiative that he might end up actually agreeing with, because you have to fight. The police have to fight as hard as these gang leaders are fighting. And it's even worse because someone from the community said it's getting worse. The issue of gangs, it's getting worse now, of which, as Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi said, the issues that contribute amongst many is these issues of unemployment. We know in South Africa, unemployment is increasing every now and again, and people venture into crime as a way of making money very quick, as a way of making money for their families. You know, you don't have to go through the hard work of applying for a job and get disappointments now and again. So the only solution is for you to be involved in crime, because it looks like that is some kind of quick money.
I come back again. Organized crime outside prisons are the big problem, because the organized crime outside prison make use of prisoners because it's a nice smokescreen. How would a person who is in jail be able to organize crime? Yes, we know what they do it. Let's take the cell phones, and the only way they really can do it is with cell phones. And I said that we start now, and we're busy with a process where not even wardens are allowed to go into prison facilities with a cell phone. People say we must get signal jammers. It's very costly, and there are certain problems with that. So we are working on that.
Yeah.
I'm not in a state of denial when that comes to the fore.
Yeah.
But we must take hands. It's no use we try to do blame shifting. It's Correctional Services, or from my side, it is the community. It's all of us must take hands to fight this evil, and I call it the evil of gangsterism.
So that looks like that is something that they are looking at. Then I wanted us to look at some examples, because remember that Madlang Commission is very important when it comes to such aspects. And I love it that Minister Groenewald and Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi are talking about gangs, while at the Madlang Commission we are dealing with gangs and extrajudicial unalivings that are involving the police as well as accused persons at some point who are part of gangs. And we know about Bevan Loftus. Bevan Loftus, we've spoken about him before in this channel, where we're hearing Mr. John Barnabas's testimony. And he was painted as an innocent person who was unalived by a police officer, but we are finding out later through more testimonies that are coming from other different officials that he was not an innocent party in all of this. That Mr. Bevan at some point he was part of a gang and he was always hanging out with a gang called Hollywood.
I used to see this guy sitting where the Hollywood gang is, in Woodville Road. Even though I knew that his granny was in Reiger Road, and Reiger Road was where notorious gang, the Young Destroyers, was from. But he was not sitting with that gang. He was sitting with the Hollywood. And that Hollywood gang was led by a person, I don't know if I should name him, but he's a fugitive at the moment. He's someone that's wanted as a sentenced prisoner. He's sentenced, but he's somewhere on flight.
So Mr. Gregory Loftus is the father of Mr. Bevan Loftus and has came forward to actually defend his son, paint his son as this innocent person that he was not even a member of any gang. While Captain Ashley Houston as well as Colonel Dina Govender, they're saying a different story regarding Mr. Bevan and the type of person that he was and the fact that he was part of a gang. But according to his father, Gregory, he's saying that no ways, his son was not a gang member, his son was not involved in illegal activities, his son was being targeted because someone who is a rivalry or who is someone that has a problem with his son, which is Clive Naker, paid the police over 2.5 million rands, paid the police 2.5 million rands so that they can unalive his son.
We were discussing this all the time with people. It was a thing that was going on in the area. And then this friend of mine approached me and he said A, B, and C, which now corroborated what Bevan had said to me.
I just want to just make sure that I understand. So you're saying that Bevan tells you for the first time that this is in 2022, that there is a hit on him.
Yes.
And he tells you that it's for 2.5 million.
Yes.
Does he say who it is, who's the person?
At that time, no. I don't recall that he said who was the person. At a later stage.
At a later
stage, the name came out of who it was.
Okay.
Even after he has taken steps to go and have an interdict to actually stop this from happening, it still happened in his flat. And he says that the sons were just sitting, nothing was happening, even from the IPID account. IPID's account says that these people didn't do anything, just sitting down, and the police came and just fired shots because they actually were paid to actually do this particular operation.
Just let me read that again, Commissioner. Whilst we were finalizing the interdict application on the 31st of March at Mr. Lang's office, I spoke to Bevan telephonically and I told him to come home.
So that's how he paints his son. He paints his son as someone that has always been on the radar of the police, but for no good reason. And that the police even came and started raiding his house, they started bullying him, having problems with him, even though the commissioners asked specifically as to the fact that if all of this was happening, the unlawful raids were happening in the house, they came and they found things and they ended up charging Loftus Senior, which is the father of Mr. Bevan. When they were doing all of those things, why didn't he open cases? Why didn't he go to the police? And he says he can't trust the police because if he goes and reports to the police, he's reporting these individuals in the very institution that these individuals are working in, which is the police, such as Colonel Dina Govender. So he didn't want to report because of that. He thought his solution is IPID. He can go to IPID, tell the IPID about all these unlawful things that are happening in his house, the police coming and raiding, finding things like a stolen vehicle, charging things like firearms, charging Gregory for obstructing justice, impersonating a police officer, possession of state property, possession of stolen vehicle, and possession of ammunition. So all of these were the charges that Gregory was faced with. And he says all of this were trumped charges that the police formed because they were after the son. And because they felt like he was protecting the son, they then went after him.
It's in my belief that this clique of guys were working for Clive Naker. Based on the inquiries that I made, and as I said to you, I found it strange that to be pursuing Bevan on futile, what I will call futile cases. Maybe not futile, but on cases where the possibilities of a conviction weren't realistic. Because in my belief, they shouldn't be wasting resources on something like that. And if I go back further, the information that was received while they were doing that, when they started doing that in Belay, when we got in fact, Bevan first got the information. It's a friend of his that told him about these Hawks guys signing for dockets, looking for dockets and signing for dockets at the Belay. He actually told him the case numbers. This is what they're taking from here. And I made further inquiries, and I got to the bottom of it, and I established that these are like futile dockers, because had it been serious, they would have arrested him almost immediately.
And all of this then led to his son being unalived by the police when he didn't do anything. He was just a civilian who was innocent, sitting down and being attacked by the police, because indeed there was an orchestrated plan. Actually, there was a hit on his son, and it looks like the person that was paid was Colonel Dina Govender. But we are getting a different account from the police side. And from Captain Ashley Houston, he told us that the Morningside incident was not an incident that happened because Bevan was innocent. Bevan was part of a gang, and he would spend a lot of time with a gang called Hollywood. And he has been arrested before for charges of theft, and he has threatened police officers. He's threatened that he will unalive them. And even when you hear the recording of Bevan calling Clive Necker, confronting Clive Necker regarding the hit on him, you could see that he was just saying, in a way, he was threatening Clive Necker to say, we'll see who dies first, or who gets unalived first.
But coming back to how I could identify Bevan. Bevan was arrested by me on request of the station commissioner, saying there's a case open. I do not have the case number, by the way, where he had threatened to shoot a policeman. The policeman's name was Warrant Officer James.
He also testified about the fact that Bevan and his father didn't have this perfect relationship the way the father painted it. They had their own problems, because at some point, Bevan opened a case against his father because he had a problem with his father. And from the way he was analyzing the scene and was looking at the holes on the walls and everything, it highlighted to the fact that there is no way that the police were the ones that were actually attacking these individuals or these suspects. The suspects were actually attacking them, and the police were retaliating because of the level. If you look at the level and the walls, the way the holes are, and when you check, there's a difference between these different holes, meaning some of the holes are from a rifle which has been used by the police, and which is the Hawks, and then the other rifle is not really from the Hawks. It's other firearms that were used by these suspects. So clearly there was an interchange of firearms between these two individuals, which is the Hawks members as well as Bevan and his group or his crew or his gang or whatever you want to call it.
Chair, with the place where he's sitting, it's not just sitting where you're sitting and having a social. It's a yard that's got about 6 pit bulls. It's got people that unlicensed guns in there. It's got walls about as high as the ceiling. Every time I did a raid there, we had to breach, as in terms of past the walls and then past the pit bulls before we get to them. And drugs are sold live as we sit here. Even if we called someone out to say, just go do a live video with us, it's sold live there. So you're not sitting where you're saying you're talking to an ex-gangster or someone's reformed from prison or a school friend. You're sitting right there. So, I don't know if it's correct to say the birds of the feather flock together. How would you label me if I'm sitting in a drug den?
But Colonel Govender came on Friday and painted a different picture, and painted even more of a complex and really questioning picture regarding Bevan. And the fact that Bevan actually wanted to unalive someone, was about to unalive someone, and had that type of operation. And when they wanted to arrest him, every time he would run away from the police. But luckily that day they found him and shots were fired, and just like that, him and his crew were gone.
6. On 1st April 2023, Bevan and several of his colleagues were at the flat on the 6th floor in Morningside flat, Durban, when members of the SCPS called there to investigate a report of receiving illegal firearms being held at Morningside flat, to investigate a report of the persons in Morningside flat, alleged to be Mr. Bevan Loftus and members of the gang controlled him, were planning an assassination in Morningside flat if the circumstances required it to arrest such persons.
Did you mean a gang controlled by him? So you said alleged to be Mr. Bevan Loftus and members of a gang controlled him.
That's correct, Commissioner.
And Mr. Govender, or Colonel Govender, removed himself from the scene in a way. He was saying that was not his operation, and he was not up there when the shooting was actually taking place. He was downstairs, and he's saying that it was Rodriguez's scene in a way, or operation. So he's the one that planned everything, even though the commissioners challenged him specifically on that and asked about the laws around that and the rules around that, if whether as the senior, how is it that it is not his operation, it's a junior's operation? But it looks like he couldn't provide clarity on that. And some of the things, most of the things that he was asked, it looks like he's going to address them through a supplementary and couldn't address them there and then.
The difficulty, Colonel, is that it appears as if you're trying to distance yourself from this operation. And the question will be why? I mean, for example, the simple question is, do you accept that your anti-gang unit was part of this operation? What's your response to that?
That's correct. Myself and Warrant Officer 7, I do.
You were part of this general
Yes,
operation?
that's correct.
But what we could get here is that literally Bevan was not an innocent party. He was a gang leader. He was a gang member. And this whole thing goes further because as we are talking about Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's plan and what he pointed out in Parliament, as well as the solution that Minister Groenewald is actually coming with, it's so important to bring this context and the fact that it is officers like Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi who are trying to do good in communities, who are trying to change and bring about reform in terms of this criminal justice system, the gangs, and what these people are doing, where they get attacked. Because an orchestrated plan to now blame him is there. How can you blame the subs for Hawk's job? It doesn't make sense.
It is my respectful view and submission that I am being used as a pawn to discredit Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, the Provincial Commissioner of KZN. It is common knowledge that this commission was established pursuant to the allegations made by him. On Sunday, the 16th of August 2026, at approximately 10:14, I received a telephone call from one of the persons who had met on Thursday before. In this conversation, he made serious allegations against Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi and again sought to influence my evidence to the commission to falsely implicate Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi.
Because the Hawks, they are there, they're independent of the subs. The subs in KwaZulu-Natal account to the Provincial Commissioner, which is Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. The Hawks were accounting to Sinona before he left his job. But it looks like still they wanted him to account. They wanted him to come forward and actually be made to account for all these unalivings. It makes sense why Barnabas John actually was saying all the things that he was saying, coming across as if they're blaming Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, because it looks like he's part of the orchestrated plan to blame Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi together with Senzo Mchunuz and everybody else, like that man called Mbuso Dandani, which is Mavuso Dandani or Mbuso Dandani, but something like that. And I think when you hear that voice, I don't know if you guys were also listening. I'm having my own suspicions, especially when that guy was saying McBride. It sounded like Gabinde, but let me not, it's just me thinking out loud and making my own assumptions based on what I've heard. But we are also seeing that Dandani, as well as Colonel Gavenda, they're talking about this issue of planting or framing Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi because apparently they want to fix the country. This is a man who's very important in our criminal justice system, trying to fight this gang-related violence. And what do they get? They are trying to frame him. So I don't know what you guys think about all of this thing that is related to gangs. Do you think not having parole will actually help? Because stopping the gangs from happening in our communities probably might be hard, but stopping them from correctional services might be different, because someone will know that if I'm going to be part of a gang, I'm not going to get parole. I'm still going to stay there for years. And if indeed what Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is thinking about that, let us train some of these gang members. Let us give them intelligence, information, and understanding and training so that they can be our informants and give us information from the inside. Don't you think that having both of these solutions can actually help, especially to deal with these gangs in our correctional services? Because it's so embarrassing that someone is supposed to be rehabilitated and then they come out worse. Then why are we taking them to prison? I don't know. Let me hear your thoughts. Let me hear what you think. Otherwise, guys, I'll see you on my next upload. Bye.